Welcome to Day Zero.
Welcome to the FOUNDIT Research podcast. Today I'm joined with Kent Lardner, who's recently joined as our head of research. Welcome, Kent.
Thank you, Joel. Time to get nerdy.
Yeah, well, look, I want to sort of kick off. It'd be great to just kind of give a bit of background on yourself, and then we can kind of jump into some of the data.
Yeah, I've been playing around with property data since the 90s, back in mortgage insurance. And as you look back at the 1990s was when a lot of change happened to the mortgage industry. Things started to change in the property data industry as well. We had the introduction of automated valuation models, and property data became a lot more accessible through the 90s. I remember at a point we were processing about 800 or 900 mortgage applications a day and pulling out the valuations and analysing those, which was the start of it for me. And then I had a team of valuers that were helping me do QA checks and whatnot. So that was kind of the foray into it. That was back in the GE mortgage insurance days. And from there, I moved on to a company called Pricefinder. And it's still out there today. Really, it comes down to what Pricefinder and Cotality's RP data products are probably the two main property data platforms in Australia. Looking back, there's been a few other platforms come and go, but they're the two standouts. So I was one of the founders of that entity as well, and we designed a user interactive price estimates tool. And back then it was fairly innovative and scary putting out something like that because I hadn't put out any product like that before. Fast forward, spent a few years at RP Data CoreLogic, including a stint in China for a little bit over a year. And that was fascinating. And then here I am now, several years later, back in the fold. So, property data and analytics is the thing I love the most. When you back that by a team you like and trust, it certainly helps as well. You get a lot motivated. And we're working with a good team, a great team of business analysts around the country. So my role is to focus on the research and media.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, we're super grateful to have you on board. And I think, what really excites us is we are taking a very different approach to this buyer agent space and trying to help buyers, deliver serious edge in the market because, the traditional buyer's agent out there, they try and be sort of a jack of all trades, they're doing everything from, prospecting to sourcing to, research, and then obviously managing sort of an end-to-end process for a buyer. And so, for us, what really excites us about sort of this model that we're kind of putting in play is this vertically integrated model where, you've got dedicated heads of research that are kind of literally all they do all day long is just research on behalf of our clients and our buyer agents. And it's really kind of taken from like the investment banking kind of playbook.
Which is your background.
Which is my background, which is, you don't have a private client advisor who's doing, research and covering, thousands of listed stocks on the ASX or the NASDAQ and then, telling the client where they think they should be allocating that capital. No, that's not their specialty. That's not their background. That's kind of, allocated for somebody who's studied extensively in, financial analysis and, deeply understands how to kind of, forecast cash flows and bring it back to an NPV. And so I think that this model that we're kind of introducing just makes so much sense to kind of just have someone like yourself that sits in between the buyer agent and the buyer and just makes sure that, we're delivering really high quality research. And it's also kind of a bit of a stopgap as well, like just to make sure that there isn't some like anomaly in there where one of our buyer's agents is like, yeah, I think it's worth this. We can actually sit down and have a bit of a round table and just kind of go, do we agree with these comparables? Does it make sense as an appraisal? And I think ultimately really that kind of robust process is just going to deliver far better outcomes for our clients over just the sole traders out there.
I found probably a little bit too much reliance on AVMs in the last 10 or so years. They're good, but probably not good enough for a high value purchase. Some of the errors can be quite large. So I think a human in the loop is pretty a common phrase now in the AI sphere. But the ability to identify the most appropriate comps, and then pick out those qualitative variances, those differences. And that's where I get excited about working with a local buyer's agent who knows the comps, knows the streets, knows the neighbourhood. If they can then feed that back to me, we've got all the tools then to produce a really accurate assessment on par with a valuer. In many senses, I look at the way the valuers operate, and in Australia, they don't adopt the grid adjustment methods that are widely used by appraisers in the United States, which is one big call out. So that's a technique that we're using, which is index adjustment for market movement, and then quantitative adjustments for land size, lot size differences, house size differences, and some other categorical variables. But then finally, you've got adjustments that apply to factors such as build quality and views. So it's a mixture of models that we're using, and we can do them quickly now, which is great. And we're producing some pretty good results. I mean, you saw one that we did yesterday. It was a 6.5. Well, we came up with $6.5 million for a property that had some lovely views on a very small block. And the asking price was, I think it was down near 5 million, bit low. And the model that we came up with identified as there was a problem. It wasn't really going to go for that. And I think the final settled price was 6.25. So, we weren't too far off. But you ask an AVM to do that, it will fall short.
Yep.
The only way you really get a good valuation on something like that is to really pay a lot of money to a valuer and do it thoroughly, or approach it the way we're doing it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what was difficult about that market was it was very thinly traded. So there actually weren't a lot of comparables, or recent comparables at least, which made that a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, especially the views. When you get into views, there's grades of views. Are you right on the water, et cetera? So it does become challenging. But we found enough comparables for that one. I think I came up with 5 comparables we could use. We ended up using 4 in the end. And often, sometimes you've got to trade off time, so you can go back a little bit further. A lot of valuers are governed by what time period they can use, unless they've got to go way out of line to justify using something that's older than a year old. We, in that case, used something up to 2.5 years old and indexed it to bring it up to today's value, and then applied all the other adjustments. So that's our approach to things, doing the pricing really well. We want to hold our head high with our approach to pricing up properties before offers are made.
When you say indexation, what you're really saying is you take a sale that occurred 2 years ago, and then you basically apply like kind of a growth rate to it from that point in time to try and reflect what it could trade at today.
Exactly. There's different methodologies and approaches to indices. There's probably 2 main ones. Or 3. There's one in which Cotality do it, for example, a hedonic index, where you revalue every property in a pool and calculate the value of that pool and how that value changes over time, and that's your index. The other simpler method, which generally aligns quite well, is taking a median, but a median at a suitable area. And we're doing that at an SA3 level, statistical area 3. We can cover that later. And then the third method is a repeat sales index, which is in the US still widely used. It's called a Case-Shiller model, or a repeat sales index. And you take a property that sold once and then sold again, and you've got the variables of how much did it change in price and the time. And you throw all of those into a bucket for a given region, and you come up with an index. The problem you've got with that in Australia especially is renovations that happen in between. That kind of ruins things. But also the property's got to sell twice in a reasonable time period. And you've got a lot of properties that hold on for 20 years plus. So for every year that you add, you increase the margin for error. So that really hasn't worked too much. I've tried it many times, but it works rather well with rentals, because rentals do turn over a bit. So you can have a repeat rental index if you want one.
So when a renovation occurs, let's just say a property, it sold a couple of years ago for $2 million. There was a $250,000 renovation on it. How do you go about applying an index plus the renovation?
Yeah. There's a couple of approaches to it. You can look at the value of it pre-renovation, and you look at the renovation date or as complete. So you really do need to know the completion date, and then you add the value to it as of that time. So there's all sorts of holes in that logic, obviously. But yeah, typically we're saying, what's the house worth without the renovation? Allow for the market movement, the index, and add the value of it. But again, if that renovation happened 6 months ago and the market's gone up by 10%, we still typically need to apply it to the total value as of, the original land plus the renovated result.
Yep. So really, you're kind of bridging sort of the qualitative component from the buyer agents with the quantitative component with yourself to kind of deliver a way more sort of robust piece of analysis to support, our views.
Exactly. Yeah. Like normally I would rely on images and photos and street view to try and come up with that comparison. Is it better or worse than the subject property? We've tested AI with some of the images as well, and it does a really good job of comparing. Not perfect, but when you mix it together and suddenly you say, look, this is what I've come up with using AI and looking at the images, and I believe this one's better for these reasons, and AI believes it's better for these reasons. What do you think? And then when you mash that together, you end up with a pretty good result, especially when you've got somebody who knows those comps because they've been in it. Where it falls down is if you've got a new business, a new buyer's agent who's only been in the local area for a year, and the comp you're using might be 2 years old, so they wouldn't know it. But typically, they know the streets.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, AI is very topical. Do you think they could replace buyer's agents at some point in the near future, or are we a little way off from that?
If I were naive and I didn't respect the relationship work and the heavy effort that needs to go into prospecting and working with a network of referral partners, etc., getting to know local agents at an open house, I just can't see AI doing that, even a robotic AI taking that part. So I love the term human in the loop, and this is a game that's going to stay human in the loop, certainly selling agents, etc. I think the thing that changes is our ability to produce stuff gets better. So I think quality improves, and our output. From a personal perspective, I've been producing area level insights, area reports. That same template of report that I was producing 3 years ago, 4 years ago, before AI, would take me probably 5 hours to do one well. And, deep dive and looking at everything from how the market's moved and price segments and infrastructure projects and whatnot. I can, on a roll using AI, I can get one of those reports out in under 2 hours now. So it's still a lot of checking, but the error rates or the hallucinations are very low now, almost down to 0% where you package up the data and hand it over to it with the prompt, i.e. the context window as they call it. I don't like to ask ChatGPT, which is the model I use, I don't like to ask it for the facts. I like to collect the data, the facts, and package it and send it. There are things I do ask it to give us, such as, tell me about this location. That's okay. Generally, it knows where the Gold Coast is, and, there's surf there. But the data sets that would be processed for those area reports, I prefer to curate them external, separate, so I know what to benchmark. When I'm doing the QA checks, I can quickly do that. But the ability for it to take structured data and large volumes of unstructured data is mind-blowing.
Yeah, I mean, I think AI is very helpful at kind of crunching a lot of infrastructure, downloading infrastructure projects, kind of accumulating large amounts of that kind of data for investors. I think it does a good-ish job, analyzing data, but sometimes it still makes mistakes. It's not fully reliable. And, if you're buying a property for a couple of $1 million, it's, it's a lot of trust to place in a piece of software that.
Well, that's why it doesn't include the reference links. So you click through those links and you can verify things. A great experiment, a project we're working on at the moment, just finished it for the ACT. So we've grabbed there was 48 infrastructure projects ranging from a $2 million neighbourhood centre right through to a new bridge, etc. So some really large infrastructure projects. And what I did is two things. I set up a project, have processed all of those individual PDF files from the ACT government website, and asked it to produce a model that could tell me the suburbs that would be impacted the most by each individual project, but then also at an aggregate level. So I could identify suburbs that are standouts benefiting from new infrastructure projects, looking at and building a score that encompasses the total budget, but also the type of project and then the geo-allocation. So that's interesting in its own right. But then what I've also done is ChatGPT have something called Pulse, which is this runs overnight thing. And it does a bit of homework for you. It works independently. So I've set up a Pulse, whatever you call it, I'll just call it a Pulse, to optimize this for me, find out better ways to do it. And overnight, and what it sent to me this morning is it's improved its methodology for allocating the impact at a suburb level. So, and then it showed me the breakdown and its formula and methodology. So, they're the good things. And it's, the worst it's ever going to be today. It'll only get better, every day from now on. Now, we've never really done anything like that before. Another example is taking free text and structuring it and searching for mentions of things like points of interest or features or views, and analyzing large chunks of unstructured data quickly and embedding it in these reports. That's a great thing. I'll give you one more example before I pause, is grabbing low resolution images that we can put in the reports and then turning them into high resolution AI versions of it.
Yeah, it's a nice touch.
It's a nice touch.
Let's talk about research process, specifically our research process. How do we do it?
We take an approach which, I'll start from the top down. At a macro level, we carve up the market like anyone else does, greater capital city areas. So that's a given. But our philosophy is you always start out with a budget. So we talk about buyers. This is all about buyers. So what a buyer's interested in is, what can I buy for my budget? So we're applying that thought process, that philosophy to almost every metric. So at a greater capital city area, we like to segment up and say, what can I buy for this price bracket or price band or budget, etc. So that's the first thing we do. And then that splits up and helps us identify the markets that suit certain budgets, especially somebody who may be an overseas buyer, doesn't know where to buy, but they know their budget. So that's the first thing. The second, then, what we do is we break down to what's called a statistical area 4, SA4, SA3, etc. These are Australian Bureau of Statistics. I'll just say ABS from now on. These are ABS boundaries, and they differ from local government areas or suburbs, etc., because they're purposely designed to be statistically sound. The smallest unit we work with is called an SA1. It's 200 or 300 homes in it. It's that smallest unit that they serve up the census data.
So give me an example. Is an SA1 like Bondi Beach?
No. Bondi Beach